All right, folks, if everyone can grab a seat, we'll get started. And I've been instructed to ask everyone to move to the front. To all you guys in the back, come on forward. Ramesh will be chasing you if you don't. Don't get her mad. Don't get Ramesh. Oh, sorry, it wasn't Ramesh. It was someone else. Come on, guys, move up forward. We'll make this a little bit more intimate. Last session of the day. All right.
The closer you get, the more beer you get.
Slides up. How do we, Matthew?
I turned it off. You gotta hit FN and then like it's F8 for time.
Turn the projector on.
There we go.
And
Please stay there.
there we go. Okay, all right, so for the grand finale, Chuck, this will be the best panel, not yours. So we have an interesting discussion here to really focus in on what's actually on the horizon in cybersecurity, what's out in the future, where's the innovation coming from? We heard some really great discussions today about the here and now, and the objective for this one is to really focus on what's in the future. We've been, as a panel, challenged to wow the audience, so we'll see. You can rate us as to whether we've been successful or not. So I'll do a few slide overview, just a little bit on the venture market, a little bit on some trends that we're seeing from a venture perspective, and each of the panels will do a similar presentation within their domains. But before I get started, I just wanted to ask the panelists to do a quick introduction, who they are, and where they work. Ben, do you want to start?
Ben Griffin, Juniper Networks. Yeah. Ethan Ortiz, Symantec.
Vivek Sharma's Imperium.
Great. All right, so just a quick bit of background as to who I am and why we're here. So I'm with Comcast Ventures, which is the venture capital affiliate of Comcast Corp. Our role within the organization is really twofold. One, to go out and make investments in innovative companies that are on the horizon, help support these businesses as they develop their models and bring them to market, and then work very closely with our various business unit leaders to identify innovative companies that would be great vendors and suppliers and partners to the organization. We've been at it since the late 90s, so we made well over 160 investments, hundreds of millions of capital deployed. Comcast is very committed to this effort. The founders of Comcast were entrepreneurs 50 years ago or so, and so they always have a passion for helping entrepreneurs financially, but also operationally, and so it is a significant commitment by the organization. In the security realm, we've been active. In the past, we were investors in companies like Arbor Networks, Tripwire, Divide, that we sold recently to Google, and then most recently in Bay Dynamics and BitSight. Both companies are here with us today, and you heard from BitSight, and you'll hear from Bay Dynamics tomorrow. So enough about us. So we're very active in the security space, as I mentioned, but the question is why? And so, I try to think of the world from a very simplistic perspective. Think about, why are people spending money on this? Is there capital to be deployed that would generate a return? And so, in a sort of comical way, many have seen this quote, which is that there are two types of companies in the world: those that know that they've been breached and those that don't know that they have been breached. And so that typically draws out some concerns and fear. And if we go back to a quote by our friend Warren Buffett, when there's fear, there's greed. And so from a venture perspective, that is certainly not lost on the venture capitalist as a result. And just really quick, from a scale perspective, as to the capital that has gone into the venture-backed cybersecurity companies. So $8.5 billion of venture dollars have gone into about 1,100 or so deals in cybersecurity alone. This is not the broader venture community. This is a very isolated part of where venture capitalists put their money. You can see, from a pace perspective, this is through the first 2 quarters of this year, the absolute dollars that have been invested, the 1.2 billion, well on track to at least meet, if not exceed, 2014. And from a deal perspective, we'll see what the numbers come out. But huge category. You can see the trend line, a tremendous amount of capital going into the category. Really quick snapshot as to how the money is being distributed, both geographically and from a stage perspective, obviously Silicon Valley is garnering the lion's share of that capital, as probably would be expected by many, just given the number of startup companies that exist there and the venture capitalists that exist there. But it's certainly not alone, right? Silicon Valley is only about 27%, and there is innovation happening outside of it. Boston, obviously, shares a lot of that. The DC, the Baltimore, Washington corridor area has a lot of cybersecurity innovation. So while there's definitely a lot of activity in Silicon Valley, it's not only there. You can see from a capital deployment perspective, I don't know if the little bar graphs show up, but you can see that the sizes of the transactions are increasing, so more capital is going into deals year over year. You could see the median deal, and you can see the delta between the average deal size and the median deal size. So clearly that there are some very big checks being written to skew the median above the average. So just really quick background to kind of set the background to the venture community here. How many people know what a unicorn is as applied to venture? Anyone? So unicorn is a term that came into the market probably 2 or 3 years ago to signify a really rare breed, right? The unicorns are very rare, and so the analogy was very rare companies that were able to achieve $1 billion valuation. And so that historically was very, very rare, right? Facebook, prior to them going public, achieved obviously $1 billion valuation, but it was a very rare event. In the security world, you have half a dozen or so companies that are in that stratospheric unicorn category. As a venture market as a whole, there are about 142 unicorn companies that are being added almost on a weekly, bi-weekly basis at this point. If you add up the private market valuations of all of the unicorns, it's over $500 billion of market value. An astronomical number. It's just insane. There's no way that much capital will come out of these businesses. But yet, there is a tremendous amount of activity. To the point I was making about private market valuations, these unicorns, hopefully you guys can see that. So the orangest bar are the IPOs. These are companies that have exited. These are venture-backed companies that have gone on to become public. The blue bar are private companies. So venture capitalists invest dollars to take more dollars out. But if the IPO market has fewer billion-dollar valuations than the private market valuations, there's clearly an issue there. There's clearly a problem in the market in that regard. But yet, the capital is still flowing. You can see 2115 far outpacing private market than public markets. Then, if IPO is not your way out, the other way out is obviously through acquisition. These are the acquirers. We saw Cisco really picking up its activity pace with the Lanco acquisition just this week or last week, and a number of others, OpenDNS. This landscape is certainly changing as well. There's consolidation that's happening. But also, we're seeing the likes of Raytheon into the market that we would have never probably imagined. And I'm sure there will be many others that enter this category because the Raytheons of the world are being asked by their customers about their security suite. They didn't have an answer, now they do. And I'm sure there are many other companies that were in networking, were in equipment categories that will look to pick up security portfolios. So I think the M&A markets in security will certainly accelerate. So the last slide, and it's a little bit of a longer slide, I was asked to kind of jot down some trends that we're seeing around innovation. And so this is purely based on observation. It's not indicative of anything specific. But one of the topics that we're seeing quite a bit of discussed, and actually, by the way, I should mention, these slides were created well before today's event, and the reason I say that is because a lot of the much of the conversation today actually resembles some of these topics here. So the first one is around data masking, a term that I'm sure many people have heard of previously, where Gartner coined dynamic data masking. So not data encryption, but data masking. So changing the qualities of the data, creating manufactured data. I think Ramesh mentioned that earlier today. And the reason this is coming up more and more is that there was a Senate hearing a few months ago or so where James Clapper, who's the national director of, who's director of national intelligence, was presenting to the House Subcommittee on Intelligence and made a specific reference to data in the future. The biggest fear to data is the manipulation and the change of it, not the exfiltration of the data. And so it's not so much about having credentials stolen, it's about changing that data. And so a topic that's coming up more and more is what else do we do? Data encryption is one, that's for sure. But what else do we do? If we could change the integrity of that data, perhaps for the bad actors, they begin to question whether that data is worth attacking because it may not be accurate when they reach it anyway. The next topic, and this has been discussed as well, is breach analytics. So if once a breach does occur, how do we analyze it? The term data tsunami is one that we've all heard of previously, but it's a very real problem for organizations that are big and small. And so being able to manage that data, being able to analyze that data, and then act on that data is becoming critically important, and doing it with a machine perspective rather than just humans that are sitting in a SOC. We've all talked about that. We just have a significant understaffing of cybersecurity professionals in this industry. That isn't changing anytime soon, so the reliance on machines will be of even more importance down the road. Then the next step of that is, which is once you have the intelligence, could machines actually go in and remediate this? And this is an earlier category. It's certainly at this point prone to false positives, false negatives, and most of the remediation that's happening in kind of the wave 1, wave 2 are more of the ankle biter variety, the really basic breaches that occur, or the basic malware. But given the inflow of malware, given the breaches that are occurring, this remediation piece, I believe, really needs to scale and needs to be something that we as an industry rely on, because we just can't do it with people. Humans there just aren't enough hours in a day, there aren't enough people to act on it. We discussed vendor assurance earlier today. We discussed cloud. We discussed the reliance on third parties. We discussed how we're becoming more and more outsourced as an industry, but yet we're much more now exposed because we have all these new threat vectors that are being created. So how do we ensure third party, and the third party vendor assurance is a critical dynamic here. We all know about Target, and it's been discussed, and Starbucks employee credentials being breached through Primera, which is a Blue Cross healthcare provider. And so being very focused on the vendor ecosystem is discussed quite often. And then the last one is one that I can't say we've seen a tremendous amount of, but it's one that is a topic that I always think about, which is that maybe this is a result of Uber, where we've all become very focused on and have accepted ratings and reviews and measuring. The idea of being able to measure the effectiveness of our tactics, being able to measure our vendors, being able to measure the internal vulnerabilities in our environments is something that we're seeing more and more of. And part of this, I think, is there was a question asked earlier about how do you sell a complicated security product into a business leader that may not have the understanding. Well, if you sort of simplify it to a score, a number, stars, likes, thumbs up, that becomes much more tactile. And so I think that will be a path moving forward where you could actually measure more and more and assign a risk score, assign a measurement that a non-security professional could evaluate. So these are the 5 that I've jotted down. I'm going to hand it over to the panelists to talk about where they're seeing innovation in their respective categories. Okay.
Great.
Do you know where you're?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, can you hear me? Great. All right, so before today, how many people over here have heard of Imperium? Just a show of hands. 1. Okay, great. 2, couple. Okay, a couple of people. So great. This will be informative, not repetitive. So with that being said, I thought I'd just open up today and give a quick introduction as to who Imperium is, because We're a startup that started in 2010 by folks out of the Israeli Cybersecurity 8200 group, who further then worked at Samsung and came up with this whole concept of being able to protect mobile devices. The approach that Zimperium uses is what many of us have been talking about today, is based upon machine learning, whereby we protect any Android, iOS device against both known malware and known exploits versus unknown attacks too. And we'll get into the details of that, as how exactly we go about using this machine learning to go capture what's also what we call unknown malware that's out there that hits the device. So, a few facts, Samsung, Sierra Ventures, Telstra, which is one of the largest telcos out of Australia, have been invested in us. We've done 2 rounds of financing. We've been covered by pretty much all the largest publications out there. One of the biggest reasons for that is because of stage fright. So Zimperium is the company that actually our researcher, Joshua Drake, very famous industry researcher, talked about and discovered the Android vulnerability that affects over 1 billion devices. Again, by a show of hands, has anyone heard of stage fright? A vulnerability? Okay, a lot more hands. So that was Zimperium. That was our research expert, Joshua Drake, who made the discovery, and then accordingly we provided the patch for Google. So with that being said, I have to thank Dr. Trachtenberg and Dr. Mancoridis for doing a lot of the homework for me before this talk, so now within 8 minutes I can explain the whole thing. Because they actually talked about, are mobile devices and smartphones vulnerable? Yes. And then the solution is machine learning based solutions that we can actually apply to provide an enterprise solution to protect your mobile devices. So one of the things I'm going to show you here is what we call a network attack, right? And this is what the bad guys are doing. They're basically identifying individuals who could be working for a specific enterprise. They could be executives, and what they do is they try and stay on the same network, or they're in close proximity, maybe in the same Starbucks, or it could be you're on the hotel Wi-Fi, and they intercept the traffic that's coming from the device, right? Once you intercept the traffic, you act as the default gateway. So just to show you, today there's an open Wi-Fi UConn guest, right? And this is it right here. I was able to just scan the network. Of course, I'm not going to attack anyone because I don't want to I don't want to go to jail. Right over here, there are about hundreds of devices right now. I could just click on one of them and see all the traffic going in and out of those devices. I didn't even touch your phone, right? And this is exactly what malicious attackers are able to do using open source tools, using security penetration testing tools to do man-in-the-middle attacks. They then modify all the traffic, so while you think you're going to CNN.com, they'll modify the images, replace images, put exploits on the phone, and then ultimately once that gets on the phone and on the device via a browser exploit, it then does what we call an elevation of privileges, which is the malware gets on the device, does something it's not supposed to be doing, and that's how you're then compromised. What you'll learn throughout this whole presentation is how our detection engine that runs on the device without having and requiring the cloud to do any deep packet inspection is at every single step able to detect this activity based on the way we've designed